Facing each child, the grand almoner proceeded with the preparatory ceremonies, whereupon their majesties entered the sanctuary and sat upon their chairs of state opposite the font. The children, led or carried by their mothers, were placed right and left. The lady-in-waiting uncovered the prince's head and went with him to the font, which was a signal for each mother to do the same for her child. After the mass and the benediction, the grand chamberlain and the grand marshal served their majesties for the ceremonial washing. After the bishops had done homage, the procession formed again and returned to the drawing room, where the empress presented the mothers with lockets containing the portraits of the emperor by Isabel, surrounded with brilliants worth from 6,000 to 8,000 francs each. In the evening, l'enlèvement de Sabine was performed and a court reception held in the state apartments. This ceremony celebrated the declaration of the pregnancy, which the emperor notified officially to the Senate and the Emperor of Austria. He was really in love with the Empress and was foolishly lavish to anyone who assisted in displaying her beauty. To plan for his instance, for whose posterity was reserved such strange destinies, and who was alone, in Napoleon's opinion, capable of dressing the Empress's hair, received a present of 12,000 francs over and above his salary of 12,000 francs and 6,000 francs pension. Canova was summoned to make a statue of Marie Louise, for which he was given 30,000 francs. Napoleon did everything in his power to obliterate traces of his first wife's existence. Her figure was removed from David's Distribution des Aigles. He would have liked to take it out of Régnon's Mariage du Roi de Westphalie. Josephine's monogram was removed from the great and small apartments of the Tuileries. The Grand Marshal occupied an apartment next to that of the Empress, but was moved in order to give more room for the wardrobe apartments. The emperor overwhelmed her with small attentions, and the Théâtre des Petits Appartements, where the opera comique was usually given, was designed to enliven Her Majesty. Furthermore, she followed the chase in the forest of Vincennes, in the plain of Fremenville, in the forest of Saint-Germain, and in all the environs of Paris, to which the emperor betook himself for hunting, until the time arrived when the state of her health prevented her driving in a carriage. She had then to content herself with walking on the terrace beside the water, followed by her ladies and officers and pages. Sometimes, as on March 10th, the empress walked for an hour in the garden, when the paths, terraces, and avenues were thronged with an immense crowd, attracted by the hope of seeing her. After that, the emperor ordered his architect Fontaine to construct an underground passage to connect the apartments in the castle with the terrace without obstructing the public. Everything was prepared, down to the barrels for supplying wine to the fountain in the Place du Châtelet. This device was not to be announced beforehand, but was to appear unexpectedly. Pages were to be sent to announce the event to the municipal body. If a prince should arrive, the lucky messenger would receive a pension of 10,000 francs for the rest of his life. Cardinal Marie became agitated over the mandate he was to deliver, and begged for the order of the ceremonial to be communicated to him. Of more importance still was the Virgin's shirt. Since the 9th century, the church in Notre Dame de Chartres had possessed a relic of the Virgin deposited there by Charles the Bald. This relic was to be exposed with great solemnity throughout the prayers, which were to be offered up for Her Majesty's happy delivery. On March 14th, the chapter, headed by the Bishop of Versailles, presented the Empress with a facsimile of this precious relic, embroidered in satin, for it had been the immemorial custom to send 6 deputies with a similar copy to the queens and dauphins upon their first confinement. On March 19th, the labor pains began. On the 20th, the baby was born and privately baptized. On the 21st, the emperor, seated on his throne, received the homage of the court. On the 22nd, the homage of the Grand Corps de l'État, to whom His Majesty the King of Rome gave audience. On the 24th, there was grand parade in the Court de Tuileries. On the 25th, the last bulletin was published to the effect that Her Majesty the Empress had safely passed through all complications. Everything had already been prepared for the removal of the young mother to St. Cloud, which took place exactly a month after her confinement. From May 9th, the Empress followed the chase in her carriages until on May 14th, as though completely recovered, she left for Rambouillet, which she left on the 22nd for Normandy. By 5 o'clock, the company were in the carriage. Déjeuner was taken at the Château de Toubouf, with Comte de Lille, Chamberlain since the Great Promotion. A halt was made to inspect the pin stables. The party set to Caen, where the hotels d'Agrefeuille and de Frasne in the Rue Gilbert had been combined to provide a palace. Monsieur de Nathan, formerly Marquis, commanded the mounted guard of honor. All went well. There were neither benefits nor favors, scarcely the audiences, save for the old nobility. Monsieur de Creville commanded the foot guards. Monsieur de Vandevre presided over the electoral college, and Monsieur Lantaigne de Longeviere was mayor of Caen. Smiles, presents, and pensions were pressed upon them. 37 ladies of Caen were presented, but all of these had the prefix de. The only gentlemen were admitted to the levee on the 25th. Money, indeed, was liberally bestowed on the poor at Houdin, Dreux, L'Aigle, Argentan, and at Falaise. Caen, for example, received 20,000 francs for the hospitals. 100,000 francs were allotted to the victims of the fires at Evréchy, and 700,000 for the canal from Caen to the sea. Everywhere, as far as Cherbourg, the same liberality prevailed. An inexhaustible stream of gold flowed from the hands of the emperor. Gold, however, is not everything, and the bourgeois knew it. Marie Louise appeared haughty, bored and silent, in the mocking Norman phrase, a face of wood. She could not find a word to say to the officials, nor a smile for the little girls who offered her flowers. She took part languidly in the receptions, balls, and promenades, while her lady-in-waiting distributed the necessary gifts like an alms in a dry, contemptuous voice. The Empress only relaxed at Cherbourg, and even then, not at the performances given by Feydeau's company, but in excursions with the emperor when visiting the ships or the shore, or when, in rough horseplay, he treated her as a comrade. But granting that she seemed to be inert and incapable of making herself agreeable, might it not have been in consequence of the imprudence of undertaking this journey in which she desired to accompany her husband, though hardly recovered from her confinement, rather than to her timidity and disposition? The fatigue she endured was apparent from her emaciation, for she insisted on going about with the emperor, and the emperor was indefatigable. On several occasions they started at 4 in the morning. On the first day they traveled for 19 hours, from 4 in the morning to 11 at night. Twice the stages of their journey lasted 12 hours. This was nothing in comparison with the 1808 tour, from which Josephine, with all her strength and powers of resistance, escaped with only a serious illness. But Marie Louise was a very young woman, exhausted by her confinement. They were no sooner back from Cherbourg than the rush began again, intensified, doubled, and trebled for the baptism of the King of Rome.